Welcome to the June 8 Eclipse OpenJ9 community call. As always, please add your name and affiliation to the list of attendees just so we know who's been joining the calls. And then I'll pause here for a minute to give people an opportunity to add anything to the agenda that's not already there. This, of course, is not your only opportunity. If something comes up, please jump in or please add it to the any other business section at the end. We were supposed to kick this one off today with a lightning talk, but I don't see Lan on the call yet, so I guess we'll keep going and maybe circle back if she joins in a bit. All right, so we'll take a quick look at the recent user-raised issues, see if there's anything there that needs attention or discussion today. Looks like there's a crash generating Java core files, but that's definitely has some conversation and it's been assigned. There's some discussion about invalid classes that are not being rejected, and an issue with bytecodes not being executed, and that's gone to the Jit team. Question about structured locking, which doesn't seem to have a response yet. There's a question about structured locking, which we don't currently implement in OpenJ9. Probably circle back and take a look at that. Is there anything on this list that people feel needs more discussion today or needs some attention? Okay. Circle back to the agenda. Quick look at the download trends from Adopt OpenJDK. Switch that to just look at the OpenJ9 downloads. Seeing about 35K, where almost 7 of that is JDK 8. Majority continues to be 11. Small smattering of 16 and other releases. Does anyone have any comments around the download trends? They continue to be pretty much what we've been seeing in the past, so jump back to the agenda. Before I go on, I do see that Lan is on now. Lan, are you ready to give your lightning talk?
Yes, I am. I'm so sorry that I'm late. I was happily talking to someone about the dynamic VM. Yes, I am. Let me share my screen. Do you see my screen right now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So, so today's talk, basically, just gonna talk about a scenario where I'm a developer and I want to check whether a particular test failure is intermittent and what I should do and where I start. So, just want to share with some of the key points about today's talk. So there's just 3 things that we can do, which I will get into the details. So the first thing is we can look at the TRSS history and check whether this test has been failed before. And we also can use Grindr to help us to try to identify whether this is an intermittent issue. There's 2 ways to run Grindr. One with iteration, another one is with parallel, which I will talk more in details. So let's go to a real world example. And I'm sorry, Peter, I'm choosing your issue again. So if you haven't seen our previous test series, you know when I get this issue, we can use Grindr to rerun the test. But at this point, I just want to know, has this test failed before. So this is the test name, test DDR extend general _ 0. So you can go to TRSS, which is a test result summary service that monitors Jenkins server. Unfortunately, we do not monitor OpenJ9 at this point. So we do have the internal build that we monitor. So I will use internal build for the demo purpose. So this is OpenJDK 8 J9 on Mac. So if you look at TRSS, looking at one of the OpenJDK 8 build, and then you can actually go into one of the build and you can search for this test. Right. So what does this do is basically go into the database and search for matches of this particular test. And as long as in the console output it contains the string, it will give you the result. In this case, there's some contains in the pre-test, the post-test, which is whatever runs before the test and whatever that's after the test. So pre-test contains like compilation, post-test contains stuff like test summary, upload to Artifactory, that sort of stuff. So what we really care about is really the particular test. And if you go back in the issue, it says Mac, right? So we're looking for a Mac platform. So Mac is here, and what we want to look at is the deep history. So click on that. That will give you the deep history up till whatever the database allows, which at this point is April. And what we can say here is, oh, I don't see any failures. So that just suggests to me that this is something new. Okay, so that's one thing. If you see failures here, then you can click on to those test results and to see what is the failures. So that's one way. Another thing is, okay, so now what I do, I probably want to reproduce this. So if you click, if there's a rerun link, you can go to it. If you don't, then in this case, you launch to the build. We talked about in our previous series, you can do rerunning grinder, and then that will give you link to the grinder with all parameters. And then we want to reproduce on this particular test, which change. So you should change the test target. By the way, I go through this really quickly because we talked about this before. So you change the target into the DDR extend general, and then you can click on build to run this particular test. And then if it come back to be, let's say, pass, and you want to run it in multiple iterations, so you just want to see whether this is intermittent issue, which in this case, you need to use iterations. So there is a parameter called iterations right here. So if you really read into these descriptions, basically we're saying, if you change this number, we will just keep running this test, whatever times that you specify. So I can say I want to run it 100 times, and then don't change anything else. Click on build, then that means I will run this test 100 times on one particular machine, only one, okay? So in this way, you can just basically grind this test however times you want to. Okay, then question comes, what if my test takes really long time to run? Or what if I want to run parallel on multiple machines? What I should do? So this, if you go back to the slides, this is grinder with parallel parameters and number of machines iteration. So we need all three parameters to help you to achieve that. By setting the parallel equal to nodes by iterations, that means we're going to leverage number of machines and iterations to help you doing that. So let's say if I say my number of machines equal to 2, my iterations is 100, and I'm running nodes by iterations, that means I will run my grinder in parallel on 3 machines, and on each machine, the test will run 100 times. So in total, that's 300 times of that particular test, but then parallel that on 3 machines. So, and then that's it, and then you can just click on build, and the grinder will actually create child job, which is grinder underscore test list underscore 0, 1, and 2. Probably my old build is already being purged, but you get the idea. You will see something like test list 0. So those are the children build. That's one of my previous runs. So we have those as an index to indicate what kind of children, which children build it is. So that's a quick overview of how you do it. Come back to the key points again. TRSS deep history is your friend. Grinder with iterations to run on one particular machine. If you want to do a parallel, and then you can do parallel nodes by iterations with number of machines and iterations parameters. And that's it for the quick overview of how to check intermittent failures. And do you have any questions?
Well, thanks, Lan, for giving that presentation. That's a lot of detail, but also an incredibly cool piece of technology for being able to grind out.
I know I went through really quickly, and as always, if you guys have any questions, let us know on the Slack channel, because I know I'm late, so I'll try to get through this quickly. Yeah. And then if you have any suggestions in future talks, let us know. And thank you. I will stop sharing. Back to you, Dan.
Thanks, Lan, and to your teammates as well for giving on this presentation series. I think it's been a really big help for anybody looking to work with the test system and to be able to use the grinder technology. So I think that's been really useful.
You're well welcome.
So if we jump back to our agenda for the 0.27 release, I see the code split has been done. Pete, do you know if the milestone builds have been done as well? The milestone 1 builds? Don't see Pete on the call, actually, so.
We expect to have them today. I don't think we'll have them published externally yet, because I think we're still waiting on those approvals, but it will allow us to do the testing internally.
Exactly. For the next item here was the OpenJDK method handles and whether we could support that in the 0.27 release. So I know last week we talked about whether this was going to be feasible or not, and there was a concern about the timeline given we've already split a large amount of work still to happen. So I just looking if there's an update here. I know Babneet's not on the call, but Toby?
I can give at this point, we're not going to target 0.27 because there's simply too much to be done at this point. It would be too risky to even attempt to try to enable a feature this big since we've already split. So we're going to target 0.28 with the intention of enabling it in the headstream as soon as we can, just to give us as long of a runway as possible to test the new implementation. The two major things holding it up are the first thing being the functional test failures. So all the known test failures are being worked on, they just haven't been resolved yet. So that's the first thing we need to do. And the other thing is to ensure that the performance is adequate, where adequate needs to be defined. So that's the other thing that we need to address.
Okay. Thanks for that update, Toby. I've moved it now down below the 0.28 release, so it'll be included as a draft as part of that discussion. Jack, were you going to add something?
Yes, Dan. So I was just going to mention that we've been closing out some of the PRs that are needed in order to get the full functional completeness for the VM. I think we only have 3 remaining, down from last week's 5. And we're hoping to get the rest closed like either this week if the reviews are positive. If not, probably by next week after the PRs have been reviewed. In terms of the JIT performance, we did have the JIT team run some initial benchmarks. While some of the benchmarks were, I think, on par with OpenJ9's existing performance, there's like up to a 30x regression on particular natural form benchmarks. I think Daryl have posted an update today that one of the reasons was that there was a lot of callbacks into the interpreter, and they're investigating like the profiling and performance analysis to see how they should avoid calling back into interpreter.
Okay. Thanks, Jack.
Yeah.
When I take a look at the 0.27 milestone, then we still have a lot of method handle project related issues in this. Okay. Maybe only 2 at this point. So we should take a look at what needs to be moved out and what we could do for minimizing this list of items.
Yeah, I did a pass earlier today. I'll do another pass just to make sure everything reflects the new targets that we have.
Thanks, Toby. And if the JIT developers can take a pass as well, there's a number of JIT related items in here as well that I think should be moved out, or should have a status update to see if we believe they'll close. I'm just being cognizant of the time. For what we've booked, we have about 10 minutes left, so we'll probably go fairly quickly through the remaining items in our list. Do we have an update for Adoptium? Don't see Shelley or Simon on the call who usually give us that, so I guess we'll jump over this and see if we can get an update next week. Adam, is there an update on the infrastructure?
Yeah, so we were having Artifactory cleanup issues after we moved. So we come up with a workaround, basically to create a new repo on the same Artifactory. So the old one continues to get cleaned up as the days go by. So once it's completely empty, then we should be back to our regular usage. Other than that, we did a few more issue resolves with the new Jenkins. So one was the webhooks for the OpenJDK acceptance build. So those are working now. And then also the session timeouts for staying logged into Jenkins. I think it's set to 12 hours now. Before it was 30 minutes. Joe, I forgot to mention last week, Joe rolled out the Cent6 on Linux compile containers. So they're running out of containers now instead of on machines. But then there was an issue that cropped up yesterday with that, so we're investigating what's going on with that. I think that's it.
Any questions for Adam? Forward. Devin, how's the CMake migration going?
The JDK extension changes have been merged into all the streams now. I'm just having some back and forth with Karma-san. Obviously, with time zones, that it takes a while to do stuff there. So there's looks like an issue with build specs that needs to be resolved, but it's just basically copy paste that needs to be done there. and then I'm looking at moving some of our internal builds over to CMake.
Does that mean that the ZOS build issues are all resolved?
I believe so. I will take another look at that to make sure that everything's good there.
All right, so it's basically in terms of what we need to track here, it's just the cross compiles that are not on CMake yet.
Correct. And I don't think we actually have any cross-compile builds running anywhere.
But the ZOS build's not on CMake yet, as far as I know.
Yeah, okay, I'll look at that. I think the changes have been merged, so I just need to switch over the default, and I'll just fire off a build now to make sure that all works.
Marius, do we have an update on?
Yes. So bug fixes continue. We identified a few corner cases exposed by large-scale deployments and fixed them. We also discovered a crash in the OpenSSL library. Again, when many clients are connected to the server, this is under investigation right now. So we don't know what's causing it. Also, Adam kindly enabled extended and system testing for Jit server in the nightly builds, and some of the tests fail. So we need to look into this issue as well. We have a fix already for one particular issue, but this doesn't address them all. So we still have work to do in that area. In terms of new functionality, we implemented Jit Dump Support. So now if there is a crash at the server while compiling, the recompilation is going to be retried, producing a compilation log, which can help us with diagnostics. What else? We started doing experiments in Amazon with a mix of applications using OpenShift. So we are trying Agnier monolithic, Agnier microservices, Spring Boot Pet Clinic, and Quarkus CRUD applications. So all in the same cluster running concurrently. We also have another PR in progress, which should provide support for downscaling Jit server to 0. So the idea here is that if there is no request to the server, the Kubernetes environment should bring all instances of the Jit server down. But then when the load comes again, by the time the Kubernetes is going to launch the first version of the first instance of the Jit server, there could be a small window of time where we have to compile locally. If the user has sized the containers such that we cannot afford to do big compilations, we will downgrade those compilations at cold, perform them locally, but also place some upgrade requests in a low priority queue, and those are going to be served at a higher optimization level when the server is available. So that's all my update.
Thanks, Marius. Do you think you could share more details on the experiments on AWS? It might be
Yes,
an interesting lightning talk to do.
Right. We just started them, so when we'll have available, definitely. We also plan to have a blog post on the same topic. So yes, we will have a lightning talk when it's done.
All right. Thanks, Marius. Assuming that the next MicroJit talk must be on June the 10th?
No, I think we just had it. It's next, 17th, I think.
17th? Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of snapshot restore, had some discussions with DJ and Toby and company on the work that's going on there. There's been some issues opened up around looking at the environment variables and how to correctly handle environment variable changes or desires to change those environment variables on a restored application. So my conjecture in that has been that most of those environment variables should not be changed and can't successfully be changed after the startup. And so the only way to do that would be to use the hooks API to be able to specify which ones should be modified and try and keep that to a limited set. So some discussion and investigation happening there around that. And there's also some investigation into the use of Jarmin and whether that makes sense in actual deployments, given the way containers may be changed. So if you use Jarmin to minimize a jar inside a container that already has a copy of the full jar, you're going to pay for the files twice instead of getting a footprint savings. So there's some investigation into what the right way to do that is, whether that's multi-stage builds or just to not use Jarmin, given that the way layers work in Docker files. Jack, do we have an update on Project Loom?
Not really. I've mostly been focusing last week on the 292 work, so I didn't actually get a chance to work on the Loom too much.
Okay. Is there an update on Panama, Cheng?
In terms of the combinations on A6 Librify, there's a. Can you hear me again?
Yes.
Sorry. Oh, okay. The combinations works fine on 64-bit in terms of the Windows, Mac OS, and Linux on Jenkins build, but we still have a combination use internal builds on Java 8, Linux 64-bit, and Windows 32 bits. We still have to figure out what happens in there because we suspect there need to, because they're for Linux, they probably need to upgrade GCC compiler to a latest version to fix that, because we never seen it in external Jenkins build. And for Windows bits, didn't figure out what's happening because they probably lead to the updated code, and we tried to contact the author. If we can't get a reasonable answer, we probably need to keep the original version of x86 Librify 32-bit version, just to keep the original version for 32 bits, because we never support the structure on 32 bits. Yeah, that's everything on my side.
I don't see Eric, so I guess we'll skip the foreign memory access piece. Peter, is there an update on the spell checking tools?
I think he's going to set up some example PRs on his fork to show us the kind of things that we're going to see when we accept the PR.
Right. Is there anything else we need to discuss today? All right, then. Thank you, everybody, and we'll chat like this again next week.
Thanks.